You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. Now, his name is the lo-fi horror guy. Now, that rhymes
that
in
is.
so many ways, like Bill Nye the Science Guy. But why don't you tell
Right.
everybody a little bit about yourself, Eric, and a little bit what you do professionally?
Okay. I run the Lo-Fi Horror Guy Instagram and YouTube page. It originally started out as a YouTube page. I did some videos. It wasn't really like a podcast or anything, but kind of, I guess, like visually, like that. And then it just turned more into Instagram page. I do giveaways on there and just more or less kind of like anything horror related content. My name's Eric. I am an officer. Work for the state. That's kind of as far as I go with it. Like when I started doing stuff and kind of doing things publicly, more or less, I guess I made a statement to myself to not have absolutely everything about myself out there. And I think it just kind of goes with.
You got to be careful too, digital footprint and all too. I always tell people, like, I title the episode your professional like job status, but that's never what that podcast is really ever about. Like I might have a question or so,
Right.
but usually it goes off on a different subjects. I've had it like lead into Bigfoot, and then with a friend of ours, James, like we talked about just horror movies in general, a little bit of his podcast. So it seems to be a pretty hot commodity, at least now in today's culture. A lot of people are interested in horror flick films.
Yeah, for sure. It was kind of like I had a personal account for a little bit, and I got a special edition of this movie called Crimson Peak. It was the Arrow release of it, and it's just immaculate as far as the packaging and just the detail that went into it. And there was a couple of people that I followed, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. They do like the stacks and all the different things that you see, and it was like, the more I looked into it, there was like a huge horror community out there. And so I was like, fuck, I'll make a page and, kind of see where it goes. And it's been really cool. I absolutely, I love being a part of it. And I love it. I've gotten to meet really cool people. I met James from Eek Channel, and then I'm, just now meeting you. So, it's sweet. I love it.
Well, it's crazy because when you start looking into horror, everyone associates it with only one time period a year. They always go, "Oh, that's an October thing." I'm like, no, actually, it's not. There's people that follow this shit when they're supposed to be watching A Christmas Story. They're watching Mike Myers lay down some people.
Right. Yeah, that's funny.
So where did your kind of inspiration for this start to come off? Like when did you start realizing you were super into horror flick movies and like just hardcore music in general?
I guess like movie wise, I was probably either 6 or 7 years old, and we were on vacation in Kentucky. Long story short, I got hit in the head with a baseball. I got a concussion. My dad's zooming me back to our house, our place there, and my mom was trying to keep me awake, and so she went and just told me like, hey, do you want to go and look at the movie shelf and see? Because my grandma had all these VHSs, just like a tower of a bunch of different movies, and I saw Jaws and Piranha, and like I knew at that time I wasn't supposed to be watching scary things, and my parents were very reformed, old school Christian, and well, still are. I can't say were. So I was like, well, what about Jaws? And I mean, that movie just fucked me up forever. Like to this day, even lakes.
All right,
oceans.
hold on. You gotta love Jaws, though. That movie fucks up a lot of people, but I swear, that's one of my all-time favorite movies. AMC played that religiously. I think the summer of my senior year, and I was like, all I would do was work all day, and then at night I would kill like a 2-liter of Mountain Dew, eat a bag of Doritos, and just watch Jaws all night. It would be on the second one. I would watch them all over again. I actually had a point where I paused the TV, and I had my I actually was eating goldfish at the time instead of Doritos. I decided to change it up, and I was holding the goldfish in the Jaws's mouth while his mouth was open, about to bite the guy. So it looked like he was eating the goldfish. And my buddy was like, "Dude, this is like your 100th time watching that movie. Don't you ever get sick of it?" I was like, "No," because I stopped watching it. I think the last time it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I watched it with a projector in a pool at night.
Oh, sweet. That rules.
No. It was the scariest thing in the world. I would not recommend that to anybody. You want to talk about auditory hallucinations where you think your mind starts seeing shit and you start creating things that aren't there. Imagine floating in water and all you hear is dun dun dun.
Right.
You're sitting there like, there's a shark in this water. I know I'm in 4 feet of water right now, but someone's dying.
Right. It becomes like a 4D experience.
So when did you I don't want to do long story short on this head bat incident. How did you get hit in the head with a bat?
So basically my brother at the time was playing ball in high school. And so, my sister and I were out beyond the fence. This is true story, 100% non-fabricated. I swear to God on everything. So we're beyond the outfield fence. We're playing catch. And my brother, was batting practice. And my dad was pitching, and my brother's hitting or whatever. And at one point, for whatever reason, he was right-handed, and he decided to go over to left-handed for practice, and kind of was doing a couple of things. And all that I remember was all of a sudden I just heard this loud-ass snap, and he literally like knocked a home run out, and it hit me right in my head and just dropped me like dead cold. And that was all I remembered from it. So
he's your older brother, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I have an older brother too, so I can relate to you on basically we're the test subjects in anything our older brother does. I've broken my arm because my brother decided to put a sprinkler under the trampoline. Love the guy to death, but I was the test dummy for a lot of stuff. And I remember specifically on Father's Day, I got stitches in my knee. My dad literally just pulled in the driveway. We were waiting all day to celebrate for when he got home from work. And my brother goes, "I'm going to beat you to the house. And if I win, I'm going to lock you out." I'm like, "No, you're not." So I go and try and cut through this little garden in our front yard. And I trip. And they have those little red brick things that are like a fence kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Went right into my kneecap. And I just remember like falling on top of it, looking up, seeing my dad just get out of the car in the driveway with keys in hand. He didn't even drop the keys. He kept them in his hand, started the car back up, and then just walked over, picked me up, and we went to the hospital.
Damn, that sucks.
As they're stitching up my knee, I'm like, "Happy Father's Day."
Right. Yeah, that's. I mean, it makes for a memory, though. It makes for a story, for sure.
I know, because every time we do something, he brings up, he's like, "Remember everything that's supposed to be like awesome and like holiday and so much fun? You always got hurt, or is your brother going to the hospital?" I was like, "We did a lot of stupid stuff on holidays. I mean, I remember sliding down the steps on my new snowboard that I got and then ramming my head right into the wall. I mean, I don't think any permanent damage occurred. Yeah. Well, I don't think any permanent damage occurred when I fell and hit my head on the wall or anything, but it happens. I think that's what creates an interesting story, though. So, like for you getting like hit in the head with something and getting knocked out, so you were kind of imprinted at a young age with horror flick films.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, how does that, like, because for me, I experienced like carbon monoxide poisoning. So I was in the hospital. Ooh. And I was put in, like, as I was in there with tubes up my nose, I had the worst experience with the movie Beauty and the Beast. So they played that over and over again and wouldn't change it. And I was in there for like a day and a half. So now I'll never see Beauty and the Beast because of that. So you had a different impact. You got hit in the head and kind of your mom was trying to keep you awake. So she decided to play Jaws.
Right.
So yeah, is this where this love for like horror movies came from?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like credit it to that moment. I wouldn't say it was. I don't think it was a different like viewing experience other than just being like a 6 or 7 year old kid and like watching. I mean, the scariest fucking thing that I'd ever seen in my life. Like right then, like I'd never seen things like that much more. I guess I should say I can't remember seeing things like that. But I mean, getting older into like 10 and 12 and 15, like. Just way too old to think about like sharks in places that would not naturally be. But even like being over at friends, like houses for pool parties and like swimming, I remember specifically putting
bathtub.
on. Oh yeah, even something like that. Yeah, like always having on like those little cheap goggles just to go under for whatever reason. Like you're in a pool and you can see in the water and everything, but it was just little safety, like little safety nets like that, where it was like, there's going to be a shark that pops up from somewhere that is absolutely fucking impossible, but it's going to happen.
That's what scares me about the ocean a little bit. Like I love it, but at the same time, like I never understood, like my dad moved to this beach town. I've grown up here my whole entire life and he's never been in the water more than his ankles. And I asked why.
Oh,
He's
really?
like,
Okay.
He goes, cause sharks. I'm like, what do you mean sharks, man? I'm out there all day swimming and you don't worry for me, my safety. He goes, if you want to fucking die by it, you can die by it. I'm like, look, man, I can put my eyes up under in the ocean and it's just nothing but green. So it's like, I can't see anything. So if anything was going to grab me, and that's always a fear. I remember one time I swam so far out, I got next to a dolphin. And I've never been so scared in my entire life. Immediately it popped up. I was like, shark, shark. And I immediately started swimming away. And people are like, dude, you're just running from a dolphin. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You see a fin, you're flailing arms.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I could not imagine. I've never been to the ocean. So let me ask you, where are you from then? Where are you based out of?
Ocean City, Maryland.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Okay.
We have the opportunity to have the bay on one side and then the ocean on the other.
Damn.
So
rules.
I've been near a shark. I've been near a hammerhead while it was breeding before, which was a scary thing. I actually used to do jet skis. And so like this is the time, like my summer of my senior year and the year after that, I was doing jet skis. So I was watching Jaws and I was at work and they were like, hey, we got a shark loose in the bay. They usually come over into the bay because they want to have their litter or they want to have their little shark babies and then kind of swim out because it's kind of more shallow water. You tend not to get messed with. And they're like, oh, just so you know, there's a hammerhead out in our riding area. So try and keep the renters on the jet skis and not have them fall off. And I'm like, man, you're giving me too much to do. This is too much. You know how many people just get on jet skis just to fall off?
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. It's like, where are the owners of this fucking place? Don't put this responsibility in my hands.
It's funny because I was sitting there texting and I'm like, all right, checking the riding time, texting them, letting them know I'm bringing them back in like 5 minutes. Put my phone back and I look up and I see a yacht of people. I'm like, look at all these people and they're taking pictures of me. I'm like, my muscles must be showing pretty good right now. And I look over and there's a fucking hammerhead. And I'm like, oh my God. Like if a wave just knocked me off my jet ski and I fell into the water, what's going to stop that thing from thinking I'm messing with it while it's trying to have its babies?
Right. Oh man, I could not imagine that. I mean, sharks for sure are like a huge fear, like top fear of mine.
Now, okay.
So that would be fucking awful.
This is actually a big debate with my dad and my uncle. I've had them both. Oh, I haven't had my dad on the podcast to get his side, but they used to have this bet. I remember when I was 12 years old sitting by a campfire. They would go, obviously it's like 1 a.m. or something. So they're kind of a little bit drunk and they're arguing over which would be the worst way to die, by a bear or a shark. And my dad's like, a shark, you're an idiot. It's something you can't see. I would never want to die by that. A bear would just bite you in the head. And then my uncle's like, no, a bear is going to ravage you to death. And I honestly, I don't know because they're both very, very scary. So how would you want to go, bear or shark?
I mean, I feel like the surprise attack would be more of a, oh fuck, here it is and it's done. I didn't even know it was coming type thing. So I mean, as big of a fear I have of sharks, between those two, like seeing this huge fucking 800-pound bear coming barreling at you and then knowing that this thing's about to tear you to shreds, like I feel like that might add a little bit more of an element to shit.
I used to be
but then if it's the shark, then you're like getting drugged underwater and possibly drowning. I don't know. That's a shitty situation.
All you hear is like blip, 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 and you're underwater. Like if you think about it, though, the way they kill you is a little bit different. A shark bites you, rips your leg off, and then they swim away and leave you there.
Yeah.
Like because they don't apparently like the taste of human. So it's like they bite you on accident thinking you're something else, and then next thing you know, they're just leaving you there to bleed out. I'm like, a bear is gonna murder you, if anything.
Right.
Just gonna be like,
Right.
it's gonna kill you probably for a good minute and a half, but still, it's I don't know, it's agonizing. Eventually, in the conversation of them arguing about this, he goes, "All right, when I'm 60 years old, I'm dragging your ass with a thing of ribeyes across your neck into the middle of the ocean, throwing your wrinkled old ass out there, and then I'm going to Yellowstone with a thing of T-bones around mine, and then we'll see who dies in a better death." And I'm like, honestly, you're both idiots, because eventually, like, somebody's bailing out of this scenario. But
Right.
it was a good, like, it definitely brought up a huge debate. And then I ended up having my uncle on the podcast, like, not even like 10 years later, and he brought that up. And I was like, that's perfect, though, because, we all have something that we're kind of afraid of. So, what would be your all-time favorite horror inspiration? I know Jaws was kind of like an influence in there, but is that your all-time favorite movie?
Yeah, I mean, as far as horror movies, it kind of flip flops back from like that or The Thing, the remake with Kurt Russell.
So what's your fascination with this? Like, obviously we talked about it, like how you got started on it, but what would be like, why do you keep looking up these things? I mean, from my experience, like, we all love to be scared, but I don't know, there's some people out there that have a phobia of it. Like, especially when it comes to like serial killers, like that whole realism aspect of people being able to do that. Like, what scares me is really nothing. Like, jump scares are all I see in kind of horror movies nowadays. So I don't really get anything from it. I'm just like, all right, whatever. Like, I know what's going to happen. There's something's going to jump out. But then I find out there's a story wrapped behind a good horror movie, like an M. Night Shyamalan flick, where they end up like, I think The Visit was pretty cool with the insane grandparents, because it wasn't scary, but they were doing stuff like, I went and studied psychology too. So I'm able to understand mental disorders a little bit. So when I started seeing these mental things happen, I was like, that's scary, because that's a realistic aspect.
Right. Actually, I absolutely agree as far as like, not so much to say like what keeps me inspired of continually watching horror movies, but like, scary wise, like, I don't know, have you seen the movie Split?
Yeah.
Speaking of M. Night Shyamalan. Okay. So that whole thing, like with the personalities and shit, like that stuff is terrifying. Like thinking of the true life inspiration behind like
schizophrenia, dude. I'm telling you, it's multiple personality disorder. I've talked to a couple of people that are psychiatrists that talk about this, and it's one of the most insane ones, because it's something where it's like you're like an actor. You're playing multiple roles. Like, you just don't have you don't have you have multiple personalities, and the only treatment for something like that in schizophrenia is ECT, electrocompulsive therapy. So, like, shocking your brain whenever those things start to trigger. And I'm like, that's what terrifies me. Not freaking Jason Voorhees or Freddy versus, not any of that stuff. When I see a mental thing like American Psycho, or I see Jack Nicholson in The Shining, little pig, like that. When I see that and I look into the eyes of that guy, whether he's a really good actor or not, it's like, there's something fucking wrong there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, with that movie, even like if you look behind the whole history of like Stanley Kubrick and how he did things, like the impact that had on Shelley Duvall. She was like the main Wendy, I think her name was, in the movie. Like after the movie was done, even she had like a whole bunch of fucking mental issues from just like the beating, basically, like emotionally, that she took from that movie. So
yeah, I mean,
for sure.
Pet Sematary was an amazing movie. That was like the older one, not the newer one.
Yeah. I was gonna ask. Okay. Yeah. Nope.
But the older one, I remember watching that as a kid, and I was like, holy crap. I think what really got me was when the little kid get hit by the truck.
Yeah.
Dude, I was like, oh my God, imagine that. Like, just that whole story behind it. See, that's where I like about old movies. They had a story and they got you really kind of inspired into the characters. Nowadays, you're just seeing jump scares. You're not seeing anything that crafts a thing behind it. And then they bring back like Halloween, and it's like a spin-off, or it's supposed to be the next part, not the prequel. It doesn't follow the other movies, but it follows after the first one. I'm like, you're bringing back something that used to be so popular. It's like, you got to learn to kind of let something go too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, specifically for like nowadays, the first thing that'll draw my attention is something original, and like with that newer Halloween that came out last year, that was cool. And like the remake of It that came out, that was cool. But like something that really gets me excited was, and I haven't even seen it yet, so I can't say that I love it or I hate it, but it's called Crawl. Alexander Aha or whatever. He did the remake of The Hills Have Eyes. It's based in Florida, and it's just this movie about these crocodiles getting into these houses, and this girl's like stuck in a house with a fucking crocodile just like crawling around trying to eat her, swimming around, the originality of that, and it not being like a remake in the late 2000s is like something that definitely draws my attention toward any newer movies that are coming out, like another Paranormal Activity or something like that. I just, a rough pass, no thanks.
I think they get too monetized when it comes to stuff like they hire a really good director that doesn't have like something kind of wrong. I feel like when you have a horror film or you're a horror film director, you need to have something kind of horrific about you, like a little bit of a sick mind in a way. One of my favorite directors, Rob Zombie.
Okay.
That guy. Okay. You ever seen House of a Thousand Corpses?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love that movie.
That movie where he cuts the girl's dad's face off, wears the mask, and walks up to her and goes, "Who's your daddy?" I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I'm only 12 years old and I'm watching this. Like this is something I'm like that's scary to me. And that's when I'm like, when I see a movie nowadays where it's like some person getting like dragged into the shadows or something, I'm like, all right, come on. I've seen some pretty sick things, and I'm like, that man. Like if you've ever seen his Joe Rogan podcast he was on recently, it was him talking about like him directing these movies, and like they asked him like, don't you have to have a sick mind to do this? And he goes, I believe we're all sick in our own ways. And I'm like, that's true. But like to make a horror movie, you got to go to the farthest extent. Like a lot of people nowadays just play it safe. Let's just show a little bit of blood off to the side. Let's do this. But it's like the only good part, like if you ever seen Bird Box, that movie with Sandra Bullock in it.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. I saw it.
The first 5 minutes was the best. That was it.
Yeah.
Everything else was the most boring. Everything was like, you just hear the sounds and you hear the noises, but you never see the monster. I'm like, what's going on? Like, you're not letting us have any of that. You're giving us the edge of our seat, but you're not giving us the full stand up.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. As far as like Rob Zombie goes, I could say like the whole Halloween remakes that he did were a huge bummer. But like, if you've ever seen like his movie, The Lords of Salem, that movie is awesome. That's like probably my favorite movie from him.
We'll see any movie like you want to talk about, like the Hills remake. Is that what you said?
The Halloween
remake. Yeah. Well, that wasn't him that was mainly directing that. He just had a piece involved into it. Like he was talking about it on the podcast. Like they were telling him that he couldn't do these certain things because it wouldn't be right in today's culture. And he was like, then what do you need me for in the movie? And it was basically just to get him as a sign-off name. He had some influences into it, but they limited his character in a little bit, in a way of him being able to kind of establish what he wanted to make it. And he was like, yeah, it was okay.
Really?
Yeah, he was talking about it. He was like, it's okay, but it wasn't something I was 100% for, just because they limited on him. Like they gave him a bunch of guidelines and stuff. And eventually he even talked about it. He's like, I got sick of it. Like it was just kind of at the end, it's like, just have my name on it, I guess. I was like, that's when you can truly tell something about like a good horror film is the aspect. Like, I mean, I love all movies when it comes to comedy, when it comes to anything, but I like the story behind it too. I think what makes it the best is being a little bit relatable as well. Like, the whole Freddy thing, that was kind of scary to me because it was a guy that was like apparently messing around with children and then was able to affect you in your dreams too, and was still haunting them basically. Like that was really, really interesting. And as that, like the newer one, the new Nightmare on Elm Street was kind of developing, like when they were showing you the movie and they were like, it was just going on and on, towards the end, it started unraveling all this stuff. And it was like, I like that aspect of it, not just giving me like, it ends up turning into Scary Movie where the woman's yelling at the TV screen and everybody's just stabbing her. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, shut up.
Right.
It's all what it is. We're all too kind of obsessed with being like, oh God, like we know what's going to happen, but we're still scared anyway when it happens. I'm like, you expected it.
Yeah.
There's no
right.
surprise.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned in Nightmare on Elm Street that remake actually, like, it's pretty notoriously hated as far as anybody talks about that movie, and I actually thought it was deep. Like, it wasn't great by any means, but it was kind of in the entertaining aspect of like a Freddy versus Jason. Like, I thought it was pretty decent, and I feel like if they ever did get a remake, or like do another reboot or like try something, that Jackie Earl Haley was like perfect for that part. He looked goofy. But that dude is genuinely creepy in some other shit that he's done. The guy that played Freddy in this remake.
Yeah. I definitely think, like, I'm not shitting on remakes totally, but I think the thing is they get done pretty quick because they throw a lot of money at it. It's not really, it's not something that anybody takes, like, it feels like they take a lot of super time for. Mostly because, like, they feel like they can just hire some really good actors and get it in there. And use a bunch of, like, when I start seeing a bunch of CGI'd stuff, it goes cool to an aspect, but, like, it's like, man, come on. Like, I definitely think, like, there are some really good ones out there, and it's a way of increasing this thing that was known back in our parents' day or an older time period, to younger generations to experience that. Like, the new Chucky I heard was pretty good. I haven't seen it, but I heard that was actually pretty scary for some people, and then I heard it sucked. So it was like sometimes they get a win and they don't, but I feel like they don't do a whole lot. Like, there shouldn't just be a season for horror films. You know what I mean? It seems like
I
October
agree.
is when a lot of them start coming out more days.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah, as far as like release, but like, I guess kind of like going way back to your original question, I think that's kind of the fun thing with horror that generally like draws me in, as far as like there's so many subgenres to it, so it's like when Christmas comes around, they have a movie that comes out like Better Watch Out, or like Krampus. That movie came out, and that movie was so fucking cool. If you've
That
ever
was
seen
a
that,
good ass movie, dude.
I
Krampus.
love that movie. Yeah.
Now that's what I like when it's like about jump scares, because they actually kind of threw in some, like, it was just a creepy concept. This guy was supposed to be the opposite of Santa Claus that basically murders you, but you didn't know when the death was going to happen. You didn't know how it was gonna happen.
Right.
And it was all these weird,
right.
yeah, it was all these weird toys that were killing you. I was like, whoa! And then this giant beast just comes down. Like, you expect, like, this isn't a Christmas story. Where's I'll shoot your eye out, or Fragile?
Right.
No, you're seeing a freaking chain get thrown through a guy's chest and ripped into the snow. Like, what just happened?
Yeah, what the hell? I know. Yeah, that was, and like I saw that movie in theater, and I remember my wife and I were just dating at the time, but we were coming out and we were like talking about it. I'm like, man, that movie bummed me out. Like, I really didn't. That's not what I thought it was going to be at all. And then it came out on Blu-ray, and I bought it, and, just kind of set it aside. And we watched it again, and like it's for like a Christmas kind of subgenre. Like, it's one of my favorites. That movie is fucking awesome. I love it. Love it. Love it.
Now, do you think that, like, movies like this are going to kind of come out rarely nowadays, or do you think that it's going to be something like you're going to probably see a little bit more people taking more time into it? I feel like a lot of the good movies are by independent actors as well, or not independent actors, but directors.
Like the directors, yeah. I could see, as far as like original things, just more of like the trend of how Jordan Peele's come out, like the last couple of movies that he's done. I could see more, original ideas coming out, as opposed to everything, having to be constant remakes. Cause I think there's still money too with like the Godzilla movies that are coming out, and the King Kong movies. And like, you have Marvel that's still doing all this shit that I don't even know how far they're into the series, and so like, I think there's other things out there, Star Wars, there's other things that are out there that are huge, major, like motion pictures. But then like, Ari Aster just released Midsummer, and I'm like literally fucking chatting at the bit just to be able to get that on physical to watch it again, because that movie was great.
I definitely think a lot of people look at like movie. I've talked to people that are directors and film themselves. I've talked to people that do podcasts on all different types of movies, and all, like, not just horror, comedies, all these things. And they always bring up the same thing. The people that make the movies, the giant like corporations like Disney, Marvel, all these types of things, they have a template and they know what works. So it's just like Call of Duty, they have a template, they just add things to it and then throw it out there because they know what the public's interested in. That's why superhero movies are super popular now. It wasn't back in the day. That was a nerd thing. That was a geek thing. If you
Yeah.
wore a superhero T-shirt, you were labeled a nerd and shoved into a locker. Nowadays, you're seeing the average person that would be considered a jock enjoying a nerd movie. You know, horror films back in the day used to be meant for the emotionally scarred people that were like emo or something. And I'm like, I used to wear a horror shirt all the time, and I used to love horror movies. I still do today. But now you're seeing like people like turning into the mainstream. It's weird.
Yeah,
to
for
see
sure.
society kind of change in a way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think too, like I can kind of, credit with like what I was saying with like Jordan Peele was, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, why the hell is this dude doing a horror movie? Like, what is this going to be like? He had Key and Peele, which was hilarious. That show was like really cool, but it's like, what the fuck is he going to do that's scary? And then Get Out came out, and my mind was blown. Like, I love that movie. I bought the Blu-ray, the Steelbook. Like, yeah, the movie was fucking awesome. And then Us came out, and like, I don't know. I kind of mentioned when I was talking to James on his podcast too, but like, I feel like Us and Get Out and like Hereditary and Midsommar, like those movies in specific to me are like almost ruining horror, because I get done watching that movie and then immediately like I start like pondering in the back of my mind, like, okay, this part seemed like there was something more to it, like what's going on. And I'll go onto Reddit or something. I'm like, oh shit, like that was just like a foreshadowing of something like later on. So then I want to watch it like 4 or 5 more times because there's all this stuff in it that, little Easter eggs that I'm like, fuck, that is so cool. Like so then I go and I watch like,
I
know what you did last
M. Night
summer. Shyamalan,
dude. M. Night Shyamalan does it all the time. You watch his movies over and over again. You pick up something new every single time.
Yeah, I agree. I love Signs. That's definitely a favorite of mine.
Thank you.
That
a lot of people
cool
give that movie shit. That is not a shitty movie.
Man.
I love that movie to death. I don't care what Mel Gibson did to some Jewish guy. That sucks for him. But Mel Gibson is an all-around good actor. Now, Signs is one of my all-time favorite movies. I actually, at one point, I was too lazy to ever change the DVD that was in my Xbox. So I used to just watch Signs like 80,000 times. So it was like I would just turn it on, have it like background noise, but then I ended up actually watching it. Dude, that movie is such a good, scary ass concept.
Yeah, I agree. The whole scene where the alien like walks by, I don't know how many like different little goofy mini movies that friends and I would rip that off, like literally record it off the TV, because we're just like, man, we're gonna make an alien movie, and we're however old, and just a little fucking shitty high-8 camera or whatnot, but like,
and it's funny,
that scene is perfect for an alien scene.
I can't watch it now without laughing, because when they're sitting on the couch with the tinfoil hats, I saw Scary Movie 3, and freaking Charlie Sheen walks up behind him, and they have that same scene, and he unwraps the tinfoil, and it's a Hershey Kiss, and he breaks a piece that every time I see Signs now, I'm like, I'm always like laughing at those scenes. My mom's like, this is supposed to be scary. I'm like, it's funny to me. I've seen Scary Movie now. I keep thinking Officer Frank Drebin, the older guy that played the president, is going to come out and freaking roll out, hit a couple aliens with his car. But Signs was a good thing, because a lot of people gave that part shit, like, oh, swing away. I was like, fuck you. Because that whole concept, like the girl leaving water everywhere and glass, like, and then next thing you know, that was to take down the aliens. They were afraid of water. But like the whole part, like they weren't showing you the monster. They weren't showing you the alien, just bits and pieces. But when they was running through the cornfield and they hear rustling and stuff, and it's them like freaking out, that's awesome to see. And that's what I've talked to film, like people that make like these types of horror films and comedy films, and they talk about the equipment they have in it, the stabilizers. I'm like, what was the best aspect of Signs was you get to see the guy with the shaky camera. If you really pay attention to when they're running through the cornfield, the guys, like the camera's not staying stable. They don't have a type of machine to keep it level the whole time while he's running through the cornfield. You see that now and you're like, wow, could have been way scarier if there was a little bit like of camera shaking going on.
Yeah. I can almost like a little bit more of a texture to it. Yeah, I agree.
it's like what you were saying about giving, like, you had to look it up on Reddit for Get Out and all these types of things and see, oh my God, it's a foreshadowing. It adds that little bit of flavor that you wouldn't think would do much to it. Actually, you're trying to fight the opposite of, you're trying to get rid of that because you want to have this perfect film where like everything is perfect, the camera's not shaky and all this stuff. But it's like, but then you might lose the aspect of what might make it scary.
Yeah, for sure. I can, yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, it's kind of like music too. Sometimes, like, I listen to hardcore and metal and all sorts of things, and there's definitely bands out there that I'm like, man, if they just like for instance, there's a newer hardcore band called Knocked Loose that I've been listening to a lot lately, and they're out of Kentucky. And this newest album, like, everything is very polished about it. Everything is very kind of like straight up, like almost like they programmed, certain parts. But then they, like, the producer added certain aspects to it to where it's like before the dude starts singing, like, you can hear him take a deep breath, or you can hear him like kind of like exhale at certain moments. I was like, oh, okay, that was a very good move, because this could have been way too polished to where like it just sounds like absolute perfection. But then they kind of brought it back a little bit with their hardcore roots as far as, like, not sounding absolutely perfect. So yeah, I can
What do you think
add
about
that to different things.
what do you think about the Wizard of Oz, where they had this like kind of theory that there was a person hanging in the background?
So my English class, this is something that you asked this. My English class, I had a teacher named Mr. Graham, and he started bringing up like conspiracy theories and just different things. And then one of the things that he brought up was in the film, was that scene in The Wizard of Oz. And I'm like, I don't know. And at the time, I had one of the earlier DVDs I had was The Wizard of Oz. And we had a DVD player that had a zoom button on it. So I thought it was the coolest thing. I went home and I pulled up the scene. I played it back and played it back. And you can literally see, like, I zoomed in on the scene, and you can see it's a bird flapping. Like I don't know if it's like a shadow of something, but like you can see it's a bird, because like he thought was like talking about, it was supposed to be somebody hanging themselves, right?
Yeah, well, I watched the YouTube video and it was like specifically pointed out till that. And it was like they cut out the scene, they kept showing it over and over again. All you see is this thing swinging in the background. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, is that someone actually?
Oh, really?
And it makes you think like super hard. Like, did that actually happen? Because like you hear a lot of stuff like mysterious deaths on sets. Like, you hear,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because this is what actually pisses me off about X-Files. They go to the haunted place that's supposed to be like, oh, it's got imprints of ghosts on it, and they never fucking find anything. I'm like, why is that? Like, there's
yeah.
like, you're literally in a place like I believe, like, if there is a such thing as a ghost out there, I think that it's more of like a memory or like an imprint, like a place experiences so much bloodshed that it gets impacted with like the kind of the memory of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I start thinking about that, and I'm like, so that would make a place for like Alcatraz. Obviously, all those horrible like incidences that happen there, but it's like, I wonder.
Oh, yeah.
I want to know the director that's going to shell out for a cast that's going to go to this like type of scary place like Alcatraz and actually do a horror prison movie.
That would be fucking amazing.
Because
That'd be awesome.
The documentary on that about how, from the actor's perspective, when their mind starts playing either tricks on them or do they start seeing shit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a solid pitch, my dude. If you know people that are making movies and shit, that would be
Amazing.
Do
it. Me and you. Let's go, Eric.
There we go, my doggy. I love it.
Let's go. Actually, let's go to where they had this, like, the thing from the deep or whatever it's called. What is it called? The thing from the swamp. It's an old school. It's an old school movie. Creature from the Black Lagoon. Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh,
I want to go where they were talking about maybe that idea of it. Like, let's go to like some swamp in Louisiana or something, and let's just sit there and let's bring a Ouija board first, because apparently anytime you do something with a Ouija board, some shit happens.
Something happens, yeah, for sure.
Now, are you interested into all things horror, or is it just movies? Like, do you like? Obviously, you were talking about like you like hardcore music, but what types of music?
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, I'm into all sorts. Like, my favorite band of all time is Weezer. So it's not to say that like specifically I'm into hardcore, but there's lots of folk music. There's lots of indie rock, but generally like my earlier impressions of music where my brother's listening to like Slayer and Metallica. And so, you know, thrash and metal in particular were kind of my earlier infusions, I guess, into, you know, enjoying music or what I thought was cool with styles.
I see. I have a big kind of wide aspect when it comes to movies, or not movies, but music and movies. Mostly because I love movies, but music because both my parents were DJs and broadcasters at a radio station, so we just had thousands of CDs.
Oh, damn!
This was before the age of iTunes, so you're using
for sure.
You're using I'm using a CD player walking to the bus stop, so I had a different CD every single day. So I was learning from like Avenged Sevenfold to Megadeth to Kiss to country to Johnny Cash to Frank Sinatra, like everything. The list goes on and on and on. So I had a wide variety, and I started realizing like it's all about creativity when it comes to music, when it comes to art, when it comes to movies. It's all an expression of oneself.
Yeah, sure.
And that's when I'm like, I can never really shit on a movie. Like whenever I say a movie kind of sucks, whenever I say a movie's bad or something, it's like, but it's not fit for me. I'm not the audience view. Like I'm not a big fan of the giant Star Warses that come out now. I can't really hop into them like I used to back in the day. But I think that's because it's not adaptive to me as the audience member anymore. I think it's trying to capture the younger kids' attention, because I've talked to people that take their kids, maybe that do a Star Wars podcast and take their kids down there to see the movie who have never really seen Star Wars. And it's good for both of them to kind of be able to connect, because that helps them try and research, wait, so who's this Darth Vader? The next thing you know, bam, they learn about him. And it's like adding that whole inspiration onto your life.
Yeah, for sure. I think with like the newer Star Wars, like all I could say is when like George Lucas made the episode 1, 2, and 3, and those came out, I think like what I can appreciate about these newer ones is that they got away from everything being CGI, and then they started throwing back in like a lot of the practical effects. Like that shit is my favorite thing as far as any of these new Star Wars movies, for sure. Like that's what's drawn me in to keep on watching them.
So what in your opinion makes a good movie? Do you think it's the casting? Do you think it's the directing? Do you think it's the story? Or do you think it's maybe the amount of money they have for the movie?
I don't think it's necessarily money. I don't know, man. I think honestly, I think it's probably heart and just passion, you know, and whether that be from like the actors or the directors, you know, like for instance, if it's a movie that doesn't have a huge budget, but like the director's got this image and then he has somebody that's backing him saying like, all right, dude, like, I don't know who the fuck you are, but the story sounds like it might work and we'll see where it goes. And then, you know, that director goes and like passes on his passion to possibly the actors, or, you know, if he's not the writer, he passes on like what he thinks would be, you know, like, I don't know. I definitely don't think it's money, because I think money ends up kind of driving a lot of shit into the dirt. You know, as opposed to like, you know, like using CGI as opposed to practical effects. Like practical effects are going to be way more expensive in a sense, you know, the majority of the time. But when I sit there and it's like, well, that wasn't necessarily my favorite movie, I might go back and revisit it because of like all the puppeteering that was used in it, you know, like all the people that had to use their imagination to draw these fucking things and then build them. And then on top of building them, the mechanics behind them, like, you know, I love all that stuff. So I don't know if I have a definitive answer for it, but, you know, I think like a heart and a passion really is kind of like, like a true passion, you know, not saying like, you know, like it's like
not just
like a billboard sign, like reach for it, you know?
Right. Like a bill thrown at him, like, oh, we're going to pay you this much movie to direct this. It's like actually some dude, like, honestly, I think you can get more of a benefit if you find some kid that's super interested in it. Like, we want you to make a Hills Have Eyes movie. We want to make sure you know everything about it. Dude's like, I own 4 shirts. I have all the DVDs. I have them all triple platinum, the director's cuts, like all the starts going off like that. Like I would pay that dude to inspire the film, not really some guy that's like, oh, you're Michael Bay, I'm going to throw this at you to make this movie because I know you'll shoot it well. It's like there's so much that comes in. I mean, like we talk about independent films. We could talk about Pet Sematary, that realist aspect of it. Like there was so much that came together. I mean, a lot of people don't understand. A lot of the actors that go hardcore into these roles when they play in a horror film end up being messed up. Like the girl from The Exorcist, like saying all that stuff, like fuck you to her own mother. And like, she's still messed up, like later on in her life, she was talking about like some of those situations, they never even come back. Like you're telling me Macaulay Culkin, like not now, but back in the day, like when he was a little kid doing Home Alone, that ended up experiencing with drugs later, there wasn't some impact as being a child star. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
There's so many things, because we just chalk them up to like, oh, they're just an actor. That's what they do. It's like, but they go way out of their roles too. Like a film can be good on so many aspects, whether it's the directing, whether it's just the style, which made me go back and look at older movies. It made me, you know, I decided to relook at Chucky back from when I was a kid. And I remember peeking around the corner when I wasn't supposed to, of my parents watching it, and then ending up like, you gave me a fucking Chucky doll. Like, what's wrong with you guys? You know what this thing does to people. And they're like, you saw the movie. I was like, yeah, why do you think I haven't been sleeping? Like, come on. I don't own any dolls for that reason. If someone has dolls in their room, I'm like, get that shit out of here. I don't want to be sleeping while their heads are turning.
Right. That's funny. I recently, actually just yesterday, I put up my digital code for the Child's Play remake. And it was kind of one of those things because like, I was a little hesitant with it, and then I started seeing more people like on my Instagram page that I respect, like their view of things, and they're like, "Dude, it was actually good," you know. And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I just like Pet Sematary. That was one of those movies. I was like, there is no fucking need, especially when the original director of the original movie is still making sequels. Like, there was no need to remake it. But there was definitely moments in the remake where I could say, you know, for somebody that truly just like enjoys horror and just, you know, kind of goes into it and, you know, can appreciate something for what it is. There was some moments in this movie that I was like, oh, that was cool. Like that was a really good idea, you know, and it's kind of its own thing too. Cause it's like, it kind of, you know, well, that kind of, it plays on, you know, the whole idea of like Bluetooth and things connecting nowadays, as opposed to just being like a possessed doll. So, you know, it kind of, you know, goes into more of the aspect of nowadays and how technology is advancing so much. And so it's, you know, it wasn't terrible. I mean, it's not my favorite, but, you know, I'll keep it in my collection. I won't fucking throw it away. So
now, do you have, I'm guessing you probably tried, maybe thought of writing something, maybe a horror movie, or what you would do? Have you had any good concept ideas?
I mean,
bro, if I
really,
watch one horror movie and I can already think of a good backstory. Okay, so here it is. Ready?
Okay.
There was a man. His car was out of gas. That's a fucking horrific incident. Already you're buying a ticket, okay? That is the best trailer. I'm already sucked in.
Yeah, that's very like Maximum Overdrive, the trailer that Stephen King did for that.
And then the ending title is, and there's no Uber. Oh shit, everyone's already on the ground like, that's the worst.
Oh my God, what do I do?
I'm like,
that's awesome.
I've talked to people like, imagine like just doing like a serial killer type thing, but trying to do it in your own way. Like the time it probably has to create, like some people that can just create music like at the snap of their fingers, like immediately just hits them with inspiration. Like Rob Zombie talking about like he just would get these ideas late at night into his head. And I'm like, wow, like it shows where like when we have that creative influence in society today, you shouldn't be a person that's working 9 to 5. You should try to be writing that down and trying to capitalize on top of that as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can see that. I you know, like my thing, I guess, kind of came from when I was like younger. My parents, like my grandparents, even more so, you know, kind of staying on top of like, you know, it doesn't have to be your dream, but make sure that you're doing something to where if you're trying to put gas in your car, like that's, you know, you're doing something, you know, legal, that you're able to pay those bills, you know, and on the side, if you want to do bands, you want to do this or that, you know, whatever, but like, just make sure that you have a little bit of something to where if you got a girlfriend, I'm not giving you fucking $20 every week that you want to bring her out or something, you know. And at the time it was like, you know, oh, this is bullshit. You know, you want to complain and, you know, cross your arms and kick your feet in the dirt. But I'm glad that I grew up with that, just because I feel like even nowadays there's so many people out there that are just like trained on everything being given to them, you know, to where it's like, you know, like even nowadays I've got my big boy job, you know, I go and I work and whatnot, but then I'm in like 2 bands. I, you know, kind of balance all that out. And, you know, I still do my basic, thing during the day. And then at night I can throw on my cape and be Superman, I guess, in my own eyes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everyone's got something super interesting about them. I think a lot of people they choose to be comfortable. And obviously, like, this is a pretty brought up subject in the podcast. A lot of people talk about like everybody wants a piece. Everybody wants a little bit of hard work that's somebody else's, or they want something. They want that end price. They don't want to work to get there. And I'm like, you got to put in the work. Like, if you're spending all your time, in a job you don't like and you feel like you could do something better, then you probably should go do something better, because being miserable your whole life, it's not gonna improve if you're not making any changes yourself. And it's like, obviously we all say that it's much easier said than done, but like, it's the concept. What do you want as your end price? I don't want to live a life that's going to be what I would call comfortable, and I want to be 90 years old, wheeled up to the window. I don't want my response to be, I made it through life. I want to say I had a fucking life. I was able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. I used to go to retirement homes and talk to the people there. And it was crazy to hear how so many of them had to grow up because they had no choice. Like my grandfather that had to leave the army because his dad died. So he had to go home and raise his little siblings and help his mom out. He had to be the man of the house. And he talked about like he never got to experience what he wanted to do. And I ask him all the time, like, and he always tells me, don't ever regret doing something. He's like, I know fear's a big thing. And I talk to people that have stood on top of a cliff and jumped off with a bungee cord, hopefully. And they've talked about like how the whole time they have the 1 foot hanging off and they're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And then they're just like in the back of their head, just do it, you pussy. And the next thing you know, bam, they jump right off and they're having they're like, I would never, ever want to miss out on that moment. And I'm like, man, like I can see it now. Sometimes you got to take that leap because the thing that's holding you back is holding you back from what you truly want to be.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it any better, my man. For sure. That's awesome. That's great advice for somebody to hear. And hopefully they do, for sure.
Yeah, I try and keep a leveled head. Like, obviously I don't have a whole lot going for me, but I think that's with everybody. We don't have a whole lot going for ourselves in a way, but we're doing the best we can or what we think we can. The point is not to just stay comfortable, not to just be like, oh, my life is fine where it's at. I have no injuries occurring right now. I have nothing going on that's going to hurt me. So it's like, I might as well just, keep on doing what I'm doing. And then eventually I'll get to it. I'm like, but sometimes next thing you know, you're stuck in your job for 30 or 40 years and you don't have the time to kind of capitalize on top of it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what I can say from, the outside viewing into like what you're doing, for instance, and I don't want to sound like a douche, by any means, but like my thing is like, I'm not a huge people person. Like if it's my day to day, like if I'm in the store or something, like if somebody smiles, I'll smile back, but like, I don't just like stop and just have like casual conversation with just anybody, like it's different, different situations, but like, my thing, when you message me and I started looking at your podcast and I like started looking at different people you talk to, I'm just like, holy fuck, dude, I could never do that. And like, it's a very cool thing and very commendable, from my eyes to seeing what you're doing. It's sweet, what you do, because it's like, I wouldn't have thought of starting a show and just having an hour-long conversation with some fucking dude that I had no idea who he was before 20 minutes ago. Like that's literally like, that sounds like a horror movie to me. Like I don't want, but like now being on this, and like talking with James when I was on, his podcast, too, and doing different things, like it's super cool. It's awesome. Like these are people that I would have never, probably met before, had this, like page come up or whatnot. And so like, I commend you, dude. Like that's super, super cool. I love the show too.
I appreciate it, dude. I actually relate to you 100%. I don't like people at all. I tell people like, I'm like, look, we all suck. Okay. Sadly, we all suck. But I hit this point after I hit them with that haymaker right there. I say every time, even in the podcast, I'll tell someone they suck right to their face. But I'm like, the problem is it's not the person that sucks on the inside. It's the one we're choosing to show. I think a lot of people, we notice that we're acting not of ourselves, not what we're truly interested in. Like before I met you, obviously, like before the first 10 minutes of the conversation, it's kind of like awkward. I don't know what to talk about. It's like, is this person going after me for something? Is it doing this? Is it doing that? Is it going, it goes that whole question basis even before you hop on. And it's like, no, I think we all show this image, and I'm like, this is what I started realizing podcasting with more and more people. When I get them on a one-on-one conversation, I find out they're fucking interesting. Everyone's interesting in their own way, but we're living a model life. We're being that SpongeBob episode where it's like, hi, how you doing? Like, it's like we're all have this autopilot default catchphrase, like sayings now, like, how's your day going? Okay, cool. And then like walk away. It's like, look, take the time to get someone one-on-one. You find out they're actually really interesting to talk to. And I started doing it more and more. And I'm like, I'll change the world one at a time. That's fine. I'll talk to people. I'm like, look, if you think I'm an idiot, wonderful, but I can guarantee you I can get you interested in a one-on-one conversation. You don't know how many times I've gone to the store and chosen self-checkout because I don't feel like dealing with the woman at the cash register that when I ask how her day's going, she goes, don't get me started about my day. I'm like, oh no, what did I just open up? I'm just trying to cabbage right now. And it's like, but it's true. We're living in this life where like we feel like we're kind of not aspiring to what we want to be. And I'm like, we have the option to, and it's there, but I feel like a lot of people think it's out of grasp. So I just try my best to highlight that in everyone. It's not a motivation podcast. It's not anything of that sort. It's just shooting the shit. Why don't we just connect anymore? I notice family dinners aren't happening anymore. Nobody's eating dinner with their family, at least on a 7-day, basis. It's all back to like, I think the top average now is 3 days a week. And it's literally like a 10-minute thing. You shovel the food down your face and you hop upstairs and watch Netflix or something, or just go into separate rooms. I'm like, it doesn't take long to converse. The problem is it's just like the game Sims. We all have a social skill, but it declines at a rate slower than the rest. Okay. You're going to get hungry before you want to talk to somebody. So it's like, once that skill drops to an all-time minimum, like I was introvert for so many years, then I realized like I needed to socialize with people because it causes depression. That's why a lot of people, they're not associating their feelings anymore because they feel like they're going to bother somebody. I'm like, look, I wanted to be a therapist at a time, but then I realized, why would I pay someone to give a conversation to me or just talk about life or talk about something that's going on in their own life? I can do that for free. I care about people enough to do that, but I care about the individual person, not people as a whole. Us as people, we're living in this life where we feel like we're owed something. I'm like, we're not owed anything. We got to work together here. We just lost the human nature intent of caring for one another.
Yeah,
That's
for sure, dude.
You just made a horror film. Let's
there it is.
Walk outside with our iPhone and film the world. That's a horror flick in general.
Going into a movie and seeing people on their phones in the theater while the movie's playing.
Don't even get me started on that one.
Oh, okay. Jesus Christ.
Now in the previews, they say, can you please dim your brightness and just put your phones on vibrate? I'm like, what happened to shutting them off?
What happened to you just paid $12 to watch something? And
I've had so many movies get ruined.
Why do you have it on anyway?
I've had so many movies get ruined because a kid in front of me Snapchatting and they have their brightness dimmed. I'm like, I can still see your fucking phone screen, sir. Like, come on. Is that Snapchat that important? Well, I got to let them know I'm at the movies. I'm like, got to let them know you're at the movies for what? Take a picture of your ticket afterwards if you need to put it on social media. But if I don't take pictures of the movie, how will they know that I went? I'm like, you fucking tell them what you saw.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point too. Like, as far as that's kind of my thing with initially, like when I was talking about like the privacy thing or whatever, like I think everything is so at your fingertip nowadays, as far as like, and this is more like actors and musicians and different things, to where you can know anything that you fucking want about this person, whether they've been, married and divorced, how many kids they have, when their birthday was, what they did, like when the last time they jacked off. Like, it's way too much. And it was kind of like a mental thing for me, like as far as like going into like, putting more of myself on the internet, to where like I appreciate seeing things where like people are still talking and still conversing out of just like general interests with things. And like, it's just kind of one of those things where, everything doesn't have to be like documented down. Everything doesn't have to be taken a picture of. Like when I'm at a concert, like I went and a couple months back, went and saw Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson. And it was just like the amount of people that were sitting there literally with their phone out the whole fucking time. And whether they're recording or they're texting, it's like, sure, you're going to have that video, but like, I think Rob Zombie at one point even said like, hey man, there's literally going to be 5,000 of these fucking videos on YouTube later tonight. Like, just put it down, like enjoy the moment, like enjoy where you're at and who you're with and the atmosphere and the surrounding. And if you're drinking or you're not drinking, just like take in everything of where you're at. Cause all you're going to do is just fucking remember that you were staring at your phone the whole time and be like, oh yeah, check out this shitty video that I have. That's 15 seconds and the music or the sound's fucking awful. And yeah, I don't know.
You want to get nostalgia off life and like actual like good memories with your family and friends. You don't want to get nostalgia off Instagram. I'm 100% with you. The only part I get kind of weird about it is when people come on like, I don't want to use my actual name. I'm like, bruh, I've had people on Reddit that come on here at Unicorn Fart 3. I'm like, I want to know who you are. I don't want to know who Unicorn Fart 3 is. So like, but I'm like, I tell people like, it's okay. Like if you honestly say like, I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to talk about that. I'm like, I guarantee you it probably won't get brought up. It just doesn't happen. I just start off the show a minute introducing you. And then next thing you know, we're going off into Bigfoot. We're going off into whatever. It's just a conversation. I'm like, I can tell when someone doesn't want to bring something up. Like if you meet someone in the store and like, if we just randomly met on the street and had a conversation, this is what it would have turned out into. It would have turned into this. It would have turned into something. You would have brought up something about a horror movie. I'd be like, yo, don't you think it's kind of strange? And next, bam. Next, we're in a film together. We're documenting shit. We're going around looking at people. We're pulling out our phones. Yo, that dude just got hit by a car. Look at that. Like, it turns into stuff. And I'm like, honestly, the way we're going is a horror movie a little bit. I tell people like, you got to be aware of your digital footprint. You got to be aware of what you're putting out there. You got to make sure, everything gets documented somewhere. It just doesn't go up there and just fade away. It gets put up.
Right.
So you got to make sure you're careful of what you're doing. And I give you respect on that one. Cause that's a lot of people don't even understand that today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's certain times where I feel like I'm like a fucking grandpa or something where people are like, oh, well, you're just not up with the times, it's like, well, hey man, I mean, not everything has to be readily available. Like that's kind of the fun thing in life. For instance, like I love George Clooney. Like he's one of those cats where sure, some of his shit's out there, or whatever, but it's like, it's not every day that you're seeing fucking like every little aspect of his life being put out there, and it's just like, that's just kind of like a genuine character.
About him. You don't see anything about him because he's like, I'm not all about it. I don't need to go anywhere. Yeah. I don't need to go any red carpet stuff if I don't have anything coming out. It's like the same thing with De Niro. Like De Niro's like, why do you want me for an interview? It's like, I haven't had a movie out in a year. So it's like, I have nothing to go out there. He only comes out when he needs it for like a film or something. And then he goes right back. He's like, who the one guy you never talk about is? The guy that played in Malcolm in the Middle and Secret Agent Cody Banks.
Oh my God.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
I know who you're talking about.
At 20 years old, that guy retired with $4.5 million and he turned that into a massive budget. And you haven't heard shit about him since.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I haven't thought about him since.
Exactly.
Last time I saw the show.
Popped in and popped out, and he's probably living a wonderful life right now. And then I go and Google him, he's like dead already. I'm like, oh, that's why. No.
Yeah. Oh boy.
That's why it's the Batman catchphrase. Like you die soon enough, or you die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. If you start trying to be in social media, trying to capture every aspect of the audience's attention, same thing with YouTubers, everybody that's on YouTube, like, check me out, bro. I'm streaming. It's like, and then doing the fight videos, you see the kids that are boxing, like people are like, I challenge him to fight me in a match. And there's like just two YouTubers fighting. I'm like, guys, what are you doing? It's getting the in the wrong aspect of things.
Yeah.
Well, look, hey,
I think that's all begin. Yeah, what's up?
Well, what were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say I think that bleeds over into a lot of like, subcultures, I guess, in life in general. But and then all of a sudden my phone kind of cut off, so I didn't hear what was going on. I'm sorry.
It's good. I was just saying, like, I mean, It was awesome having you on the podcast, man. I think like you're an awesome dude, man. I definitely think for sure you got to influence me a little bit more with the horror movie things, man. I'm definitely going to follow your page and see what I can find. I want to give you a second here to kind of promote your content so people can see your stuff, man, because you got some amazing stuff on your Instagram for sure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I greatly appreciate it. Likewise with you and your page too. I have the Lo-Fi Horror Guy page on Instagram. I have a letterbox as well where pretty much anything horror related, mostly I should say, I do reviews and I kind of have my comments and, concerns and LOLs and uppercase ha-has and all sorts of shit. But I mean, like, those are kind of my two main outlets. Right now for October, I'm doing every odd day for the month of October. I'm doing giveaways for my digital codes. So I've got, I don't know how many movies I'm not going to like put out until the day of, but like, so like the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, like every odd day of the month, I'm going to give out a digital code and just do something to kind of give back a little bit and like, kind of keep everything inspired. And I'm kind of falling into the whole, October is the only horror, time of the year or whatnot, but, kind of having fun with it. And, yeah, really, that's what I've got going for that. So I thank you very much for having me on, and I'm super fucking excited to be a part of this journey that you got going, dude. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're definitely one in the books and one not to forget. I'll tell you that.
Thank you. That means a lot.